It's time to down tools for a bit. Welcome to the Tool Shed, the influential podcast for anyone and everyone involved in the building industry. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Tool Shed. On this episode of the Tool Shed, I'm going to be talking to Adrian Ramsay. Adrian Ramsay's got a business called AR Design House, building designer, and we're always talking about things in relation to builders as far as platforms and software platforms and philosophies and tools and services and all of that. But one of the challenges that is always being faced in the building industry is working with other businesses in or working out the project, managing the project. And I have listened to a couple of interviews with Adrian before, and he was talking about emotional floor plans. He was also talking about a land whispering process. And listening to what he was saying, it was absolutely fascinating to think from a builder's point of view and learning about these sorts of things, because what we talk about in Black Belt with our builders all of the time is your product isn't the house. Your product is how you make your clients feel. And it at the end of the day, after you've handed over, maybe a year down the track, and someone says, "How was it?" The answer isn't ever about how good the build was, how good the builder's skills were, how wonderful the miters are, all of that sort of stuff. It's always about how the builder made the client feel. And Adrian talks a lot about that right at the beginning of the process. What's the purpose of this project? Really, is it the feel of it? Is it the functionality of it? What is the purpose of this project? So I'm really excited to talk to Adrian about this. Adrian, welcome to the podcast. It's really good to have you on the podcast to start to unpack your ideas about how to build from an emotional perspective, and how to use the land, where to and where not to build the house, that sort of stuff. But real quick, what's your backstory? Like, how did you get involved in this?
Well, Mick, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's an honour. You do a great show. And I think the more education that we can share and learn from every point of view is super valuable to our clients getting the outcome. My backstory, I'm a dyslexic with ADHD.
Perfect.
And I can't do anything but draw pictures and talk shit. So
we're going to do very well today.
Exactly. It's an interesting kind of thing. Like, as I say, being a dyslexic at school and stuff, I got straight A's in art. My dad's a fine artist. My mother was a speech and drama teacher. It was quite a fair bit of the drama, but I learnt the speech. I'm a Kiwi. I grew up in, I don't know that I did grow up, but anyway, I went to school in Lower Hutt in New Zealand, and then I've lived all around New Zealand. I've lived all around the world, and I've always been in some form of design. So I spent a lot of years as a clothing designer, and then my passion, though, was always architecture. But I couldn't go to university for architecture because I couldn't get the marks that would get me into university. So back in those days, you actually had to get a certain amount of marks so you could get your university entrance, and away you went. So I took off and did clothing design, and I specialized in women's swimwear globally, worked in that quite a few different places, and then moved from that to sportswear. And I've had a long association with people like the New Zealand All Blacks, a lot of rugby teams all around the world, some rugby league teams, and then also America's Cup yachting on water as well as off water, Hong Kong Sevens, goodness, I don't know, the list goes on and on. Sir Edmund Hillary, did a lot with Sir Edmund Hillary while he was alive. And then I also spent a stint training systematic innovation, like very high-end systematic innovation at Airbus, the airplane maker, in Europe, which is something that stood me in really good stead, is understanding the breaking down of how problems formed and how to solve a problem, because most of the time we're trying to solve the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And just like you said with that intro with the building part of it, yes, the building, that it needs to be right, and the workmanship needs to be right. What needs to be even more right is how the client journey is and how they remember it and how delighted they are by the journey and the emotions that draws out along the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then 20 odd years as a building designer has been the outcome of that, and interior design as well, because that's heavily attached to the emotions.
Yeah.
And I'm a TV host for Channel 9's Dream Homes Revealed, and I also have a podcast.
So
Yeah,
you got
I'm
a bit
busy.
on. The
ADHD.
The big challenge that we've got with this podcast is that you just mentioned America's Cup sailing, and I'm an absolute nut job when it goes, when it comes to sailing. I've just purchased a little 100-year-old design wooden boat for some bizarre reason. I had a brain fart, and it was launched in 1948, and it's just been completely refurbed, and it's just beautiful. But just before I spoke to you, I was listening to a Grant Dalton interview about New Zealand America's Cup. So we're in a lot of trouble because we won't end up talking about what we're meant to talk about.
To hell with it. Let's talk about the America's Cup and GP
I would love
sailing.
to all day long. But what we're going to talk about is what you bring to a building project to begin with. And I listened to a couple of parts of the podcast you did with Dwayne Pearce, the Live Life Build coach and builder. And it was a great conversation, and I was quite inspired and looking forward to speaking to you to get a bit more detail about you first started to talk about the emotional floor plan, and we talk about this with our builders all of the time, is really the key is to figure out what is the purpose of this project, because more often than not, and I want to talk to you about this a little bit later on, the expectations of what they can get for their budget is always so misaligned of late, and figuring out what really is the priority needs to be a skill that builders have, and you've obviously mastered this. So tell us how your conversation goes when you first speak to a client.
I'd love to think I've mastered it. That's a bit of a stretch. It is actually a really, like, no matter what it is, it's always complicated. If your dream wasn't bigger than your budget, you should probably get a better dream. Don't if you're trying to work out your dream and your budget at the same time, you're limiting what you if you're working with a designer especially, you're limiting what is possible. So design is exploratory as well as it is got to be mindful. And I think a lot of designers forget that the budget is actually part of the brief. And they come to you and they say, oh, I want 4 bedrooms and a study and a pantry and a whatever, and and there's a magic dollar figure. And everybody I'm sure sits there and goes, you're asking for a lot, knowing what we know, you might not get there. And then do you just shoot it down in flames right in that moment, or do you hear them out? And do you hear, and this has been my kind of, I suppose, advice and big strength of this is, we want to let them imagineer. We want to let them tell us what they imagine, what their needs are, why they're doing this project, how long they want it for, what their outcomes are that they require from it. So closing them down with the first conversation going, oh, shit, you want all that? You're never going to get it. You're going to need another mill. You might be thinking it, but there's very, very, very little point in saying it at that point in time. And what we have various, or I have various vehicles that I kind of plant out there to gently guide them to an alignment that we can decide whether we're going to be able to work together or not.
Yeah.
And so the first one is obviously there's a phone call, and we call it an Ask the Expert call, but that Ask the Expert call is all about getting them on the phone, finding out whether there's actually a match, whether it's somebody you want to talk to, somebody that is going to be easy to talk to, somebody you can have a laugh with, because there's going to be plenty of times when you're going to need to have a laugh. And there's going to be some, come to Jesus moments when when things get discussed, and seeing just getting a feel for them as humans, not trying to sell them anything, not trying to, just open your heart and see whether there's a synergy and whether you can help them on their journey, whether you're the right person or the wrong person. If you're not right for them, who could you pass them towards, or how could you suggest they look better? And then if you are possibly right for them, having a process to go through that will set you in good stead. So ours is, we run from having a good conversation. If we can feel a good synergy and we feel that there is some, common threads, and that our conversation can break down a few barriers, then what we do is we'll say to them, look, we have a design discovery process. And that design discovery process is when I will come to your house or wherever it is, the land, whatever it is, and I'll meet with you. We might be 2-3 hours in this meeting, but from it, we're going to do some pre-work. A lot like with your podcast. If you're coming on your podcast, Mick sends you out about 4 different things to prep you to do a better job. So we send them some videos to watch so they understand what's going on there. We send them a wish list to fill out, and it has some very specific instructions. As in couples, we don't want you to fill it out together. We want you to fill it out separately, like you're not married, like you don't know the other person, just what's in it for you. Let's be a little selfish here. And then we want to, if your marriage can handle it or your partnership can handle it, we want you to combine a third one, and we want to see all 3. And that has a hierarchy on it. And it's as simple as this. Like, we don't try and get too complicated. This project will not go ahead if I don't have, and put a list.
Yeah.
This project needs to have, what I would love to have these items. And then it would be amazing if we could get these items. These are the real dreamy ones. These items. I'm going to give you a quick example of, we're not looking for somebody to say, oh, look, I need 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a doghouse. That's not, we're looking for the things that they're trying to really solve. Like, I really need a kitchen area where I can entertain my friends and my family, or I can have a Christmas dinner, or whatever it is. We want something that's emotionally attached to come out of that, not just something that is a basic list. Sometimes we get both, but often we'll get an emotional thing because, somebody's saying, well, look, I'll tell you, if I'm not going to get a garage like this, then bugger it, we're not doing any of it. Or, if I'm not going to get an ensuite where I can have a bath and sit and look at the view, then I don't care about the rest of it. Don't bother. Don't bother me with it. And these are the not negotiables. Now, they're often very different, and there's often a lot of discussion that's happened before, but I'm trying to get them to not take on each other's needs. What we're trying to do is look at their needs as individuals, and then we know that we're going to combine them, and then we know we're going to move forward. So we've got that, and then we use a bunch of emotional words, and we just say, describe how your house should feel. So they just circle those, or they write their own, or whatever. That's just a simple one sheet of paper, but there's 3 of them: the couple and a joint one, or if it's just a single person, they'll just be theirs. And sometimes people go crazy and get their kids to write it as well. That can work sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. You want to be careful what you have to undo when you're doing that. So I'd say the primary people that are owners of the home, live in it all the time, this is their primary home, and yes, their kids and everybody else benefits from how they think, see their culture. We lock it down to that wish list, and we send them that for them to send back to us. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes we wait till we arrive, but we send them that. They can send it back to us, can have a little read about it, see what it is. Then in going and seeing them, for us, that's a paid meeting. We go, we have a look, we really get a feel for them. If it's a renovation, we really get a feel for renovations are great in one way because they can tell you everything that's wrong. They don't know how to fix it, but they can tell you what's wrong. When it's a new build, so it's greenfield, they don't know they know what's wrong with what they've got now, and they know where they're trying to get to, but the solutions aren't necessarily as clear because it moves from being, such a pain in the ass in this house to get to the whatever. Can't we have a hallway that goes through here like this? Or how can we connect these zones or these 3 rooms? Or how can we make a better entrance and, get us to upstairs? What are these kinds of things? Or how do we get more space and build on? What's our opportunity with it? Whereas when it's a brand new greenfield, it's about the size of the land, the regulations that are the overlays on that land. It's about all these items that are going to inform us. And this is where the land whispering part comes from as well. So then it's actually getting a much more emotional feel of what the possibilities are. When we're there at that meeting, we take along what we call a shock and awe package, and that's got whole lot of, stuff on what we do, on our process. We've already sent them a process document as well about how we work, what the steps are. But we do that first one. When we go to them, there's a bunch of pages inside this package that are called Design Magic. And Design Magic is the most basic one, and look, anybody could make this, so take it and do it. We have a list of all the rooms in a house, plus some spare spaces for rooms that people may have dreamed up that we didn't ever think of. So we have a list of all these rooms, and against them we have about an average size that they are in an Australian home. So, you might have a main bedroom at 4x5 or 5x5, an ensuite at 3x3 or whatever it is. So we write these down and we adjust the numbers in the column beside it to, say it's a 4x5, we'd say, well, that's going to be a 20 square meter room. 5x5 is obviously a 25 square meter room. And they're just making this up based on, they don't necessarily know what that size is. Often we'll pull out a tape measure, show them what their current bedroom is, whatever it is. In that, we're putting a list down the side and we're totaling it. We get to the bottom when we total it and we go, oh, you're at 400. We're going to use round numbers so my math's easy. We're at 400 square meters. Okay. So tell me about your budget.
Yeah.
And we've just got a figure on there that says 400 square meters at this time. And this is, pretty much everything they've dreamed of. And there's a pool and there's a doghouse and there's a chicken house or there's whatever. Tell us about your budget. Oh, well, we've got $1 million. Well, I can tell you straight away that, I don't know what that figure is, about 2,000 something a square meter.
4,000.
Yeah. Well, four is 1.6. At 4,000, it's 1.6 million to build the house alone.
Yeah.
That's not a project budget. That's to build it.
Yeah.
And we could be at 6,000 a square meter. We might be able to get, depending on what they've asked for, we might be able to be getting it, a bit lower than that. But 4,000 can do a nice job. It's not going to be extraordinary, but it's going to be a really comfortable build and home. And nobody's going to go broke in the process other than maybe the client. But nobody's going to go broke in the process. It's going to be a starting figure. So then we go, is that within your budget? They might tell us it's $1 million. We go, well, we wouldn't be able to get with current building costs, and we give them some data on current building costs. So on the bottom of this sheet, it's got low, medium, and high. And so we would write low in as being, say, 3.8. We'd write medium in being 4.2, and then we might write high in at 6.5. And we just show them what happens to a budget when you multiply it by the square meters. Now, if we know we're going to be 2-story, we know that we're going to be, if we're 4,000 on the ground floor, we're going to be closer to maybe 4.5, 4.8 on the second floor. If we're on a really slopey site, we know that we could be making it 4.8 on the ground floor. And this is where our experience comes in. And this is why, as designers, I believe we need such good build partners so that we're not bullshitting the client, and we're not bullshitting a builder.
Hey, I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt, and I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Toolshed podcast. I've got something super exciting I want to share with you. We've got a place that's got a whole bunch more free resources to help you with your building business. In fact, there's a whole other podcast that gives you specific training that will help you get more free time, more profit, and more enjoyment from your building business. And it's called, funnily enough, the Toolshed. It's free to join, and it's full of other success-focused builders. And I invite you to join us in the Toolshed, where you can ask me questions and get guidance and support from other successful builders. Just click the link in the description to join, and I'll see you in there. I hope you enjoy the rest of this podcast. We had an interesting conversation with our black belt crew the other day, and we often talk about this issue because it just keeps popping up that the people come to them with the plans after it's been designed. Can you price that up? They price it up, and it's nowhere near. Like they had a budget of 8 and it's 1.6 or 1.2 or something like that. And
then the builder's an arsehole for bringing that price.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get some clues as to how we might be able to come together and fix this, because like the other day, some of the guys in the group, they do quite high-end architectural stuff, and they're talking about like really super basic square meter rate is kind of 4 is like cheap and cheerful, and then when you were talking about high-end 6 whatever, they're talking they can't do the high-end. It's been between 8 and 12.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
And
if the client's showing you pictures of things or inspiration things, and they've all got zero tolerance windows and glass all the way through and all the rest, I'm looking at it going, yeah, okay, so that's $8,000 a square meter build. Or I'll give you the example, it's got lots of polished render or mineral fox or something like that, walls all through it in solid cement, and I'm going, yeah, there's $300 a square meter. It's got wide oak floorboards, all the way through it, and crazy paving running all the way up the driveway and into the front entrance and through the house as well, with burnished concrete on the other side. None of that's $4,000 a square meter. But the client doesn't know that, and you can't blame them for not knowing it, because TV lies to them. Yeah, and TV 100%. Lies to them. So,
well, apart from Grand Designs, that's the only one that doesn't seem to lie, because we always have bets.
The whole show's about it.
How close were they to the timeline, and how close were they to the budget? And it's always a blowout on both.
And that's the show. Yeah. That's what makes that show so good, is people go, oh my God, these people have got themselves a pickle. But then look at what they built. They redeemed themselves by the end, but they've borrowed money off their cat and dog.
Yeah, yeah.
So with that, that's that first point of education, and you can tell people, but you've got to lead them to it. You can't. This is where I go, you sit there and go, those ideas, man, that's going to cost you 8,000 a square meter. Why go to the meeting? Yes. Why even look to help them? So I go because we're the one who's been contacted first. I go, and I'll give you the scenario when it's the builder and the builder works with us or contacts us as such. I go, okay, that build picture you're showing me there, or that inspo or whatever, if they've got them, sometimes they don't. Most people have got something. I go, to give you an example, with the last places we built like that, that was somewhere around this amount per square meter. We've got 400 square meters written here. Let's just call it 8,000. That's 3.2 million. And you're telling me your budget's 1.6. We're halfway home. Don't get disheartened yet, because the idea, the value that a designer can bring you is, how do we push these things together? How do we get these things so that they make sense? How do we reduce the size? Is always going to be the first thing. How do we reduce the size of the home? How do we still get you the things that you want in that home? This is before we've signed any contracts or started doing any design. They're a client because they've paid for a design discovery. They're not a client because we're designing for them yet.
Yep.
This conversation that we're having is critical to them getting an understanding of whether we should be working together. Absolutely critical. And the reason I said before, straight after that meeting, is when we should have a builder involved. If that meeting, if you walk away from that meeting, they go, okay, we can see we need to chop 100 square meters out of it. Is that realistic? Maybe, maybe not. And we need to probably temper some of the things we're planning on to get it back towards a budget that we can afford. And we need to add, I don't know, whatever it is, $1 million to our budget. So our 3.2's become 2.2 or something, or 2.4, something like that. And we're now talking about a different house, ideally with all the things that they wanted originally in it, but just better formed. That's what if a designer isn't doing that, then why are they there? The design's got to bring value somewhere, and that has to be in this first conversation, and then in being able to manipulate the form of the house, the functionality, the multi-purpose rooms, all these things, and how simple a build it is. Can we get all this into a rectangle with a simple gable roof? Maybe not, because that's not what they want, but let's just say that's our cheapest. Where do we go from there? How do we get from there to where we're going? So then what we do is we will be at that meeting, and if we're going to make a design proposal for them with give them a design contract, we will talk through their project budget with them, how much on top of their build budget, these things like the design, the engineer, soil testing, it might need fire assessments, whatever it is, that these are all other fees that they're going to end up with along the process. We as a company quote them on the whole design phase, but not the construction drawings. We give them an estimate on construction drawings because we don't know what we're going to draw yet. And we have this conversation, when we've got through that conversation, if we're all still, hugging and kissing and feeling good about it.
Very close with your prospects.
Very, very. If at that point we then are going, we've always asked this prior to, but have you got a builder? We ask that on the phone call. If they say they have, we go, who is it? Let us do a little bit of research before we book. We'll book in the design discovery, but let us just do a bit of research. So then what we do is we go and we look at what that builder's built before. We look at what they, where they're based, what they do. And then, here's the sneaky part, I will ring a couple of businesses and ask for a trade reference on those builders. And if those builders if they say, they're always at 90 days, they're always at 120, they're the latest payers everywhere, I'm like, yeah, okay, well, we're not going to get into bed with that. We'll let the client do that. We don't want to be a part of that, because we need to be able to rely on the builder to do their part. And their part is to do good business, because our client, we never want to put in the position where they have a builder go broke. It's happened to me before. We never want our client in that position. We want the builder to be well aligned, good business person, learning constantly, and prepared to make a team. So if say, for instance, they've got that builder and we go, nah, that's not one. Or we get one and we go, wow, that builder's a great builder. We'd like to work with them. Then often we'll ring up that builder and go, hey, tell us about what you do or the rest, we've got a project that we're looking at and your name's come up and thought we'd have a chat to you, see if we can have a conversation with them, or whether we're going, oh God, we don't want to work with that idiot. Yeah, I mean, it's true. And they might don't go the same with us. They might go, shit, run a mile, don't want to work with them. But if we haven't got a ability to build a synergy, then why would we try and get into, I want to say a partnership. It's not a financial partnership. It's into a build partnership with them to give them the job, make sure the job happens, and make sure our client's okay. So that's part of the process. If we're looking to bring the builder, which often we are, probably 90% of the time, we go, who do we think would be a good match? And we say, look, we've got a couple of builders that we'd love to introduce you to. Here's their websites. Have a little bit of a dig. Have a look at them. We've worked with them both before. We've done jobs this size and this size. We never start out with a massive job with a builder we've never worked with before. We'll always look for a couple of $100,000 reno or something and just test the waters first before we would ever go and give them a $4 million project or something. Just see how our relationship works and what the communication does and whether we're comfortable with it or not comfortable with it, iron out any issues. Then we go, yeah, let's do it. And we'll introduce them. Often we only introduce one. And we see whether, we always do it this way. We'll introduce one and we'll see whether the client likes them, whether there's a synergy there. We'll introduce them maybe, physically all together, and sometimes at a build site, sometimes at their home. And then we will go from that to what's the next step. And we will leave them alone to kind of get their mojo on together so that they can be comfortable without our influence. And then we will talk to the builder. What did you find out about them? Because remember, at this point, that we might not have signed a full design contract with them. And they'll go, well, this happened with Dwayne and I. Dwayne says, I've got this lady, I went and saw her and she told me one set of things. I drive out of the driveway and I ring Dwayne and I said, hey, Dwayne, thanks, Matt. Just went and saw so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. I don't think she can get there on a build budget. And he goes, why do you say that? And I said, well, he just told me a build budget was 800,000. He goes, what? She told me it was a 1.4. And I said, well, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why, we need to work as teams and I mean, include the client in with the team and everyone is singing off the same page of the song sheet, because, I mean, you were talking about asking them about their priorities and, the purposes and all of that sort of stuff. And that's exactly what we talk about with our builders. So, I mean, there are so many parallels with what we're doing with our builders and how you're working. I'd love to explore that more. I'm just looking at the clock on the wall and we're kind of out of time for this conversation, but I'd love to get you back to have another unpacking of what, from your perspective, would a builder need to do to be a better team member in this scenario? Because there's I hear it all the time, and the builders are blaming architects and building designers are blaming the builders, the clients are blaming somebody, know. And it just doesn't need to be like that. And I think that there's so many parallels between what you're talking about, what we do. We really need to explore that. So I'd love to get you back to talk about that. Love to get you back to talk about the land
emotional
whispering
floor plan and
the emotional floor plan, all of that sort of stuff that I said we were going to talk about this time. We didn't get to it, but that's okay.
Well, we did have a few issues getting on today, so that was part of that.
Right.
Yeah,
that's okay. We've got plenty of 2-inch tape to record on.
Yeah, exactly, the good old stuff.
Yeah, on the Ampex recording machine.
I figure that there's a good old saying which form follows function.
Yeah.
And my friend Kelly Vandermeer from design behavior partnership. Anyway, he designs a lot of restaurant spaces and stuff all over the world. He's a genius at it. He says form follows feel. And people buy on emotion, and nobody steps into this space wanting a shit journey or a shit job.
No.
So even if they end up with a bit of a ragged journey, it's getting it clear that there's a process, and that process, if you're going down the client's process, you're screwed. If you're going down the design and build process, you're going to get to where you want to be.
Yep.
But if the client is driving the process, then they might as well have a nail bag on and a pencil and a piece of paper and let them go. Yep. Because as a designer and a builder, we need our processes aligned.
Yes, 100%.
So that we can deliver to each other, remembering that we're setting up a relationship that's beyond one build. Every time we go into a build relationship with a new builder, we're looking at this and going, well, have we got 10 years together? Have we got 5 years together? What's your plan as a company? How many years are you planning on keeping building for? What are you thinking that looks like? And how many projects are you doing a year? How many have you done maximum before? What are the disputes you've been in? What have you learnt from them? It's lay it all out, because if we can work really well together, magic is just incredible. Yes. And we back each other. You never throw each other under the bus. You back each other. If you see something that the designer could have done better, you ring the designer and go, mate, I've come to this part and I really think that there's a better way of doing it. And if the designer goes, oh, piss off, I drew it, then you've got the wrong designer. You want that designer to go, do I need to come to site? Or can you show me through photos? Can you video it while we're talking? And be on board, because at the end of the day, the designer's license is on the design. The builder's license is on it for 7 years, maybe more. And if you're not listening to your builder as a designer, then you've got the wrong builder. You need a builder you can respect and listen to, and that will not necessarily always be the innovative one, but is open to hearing about how things can be done. I've got some great builders who are not innovative, and they will stick to, we use block here because block works and we know that it works and all the rest. They suit a certain house and a certain kind of client. Love them to death. And I've got some that are wild men, they'll try anything. But they're really detailed. And so then I go, I love them to death as well.
Just different types of builders for different projects, I guess. But, it's a team
and different client types.
Yes,
it is
absolutely.
a team event.
Yeah, team event. We need to play our team part. So I love what I'm hearing. Love to get you back to unpack a little bit more about the emotional floor plans and the land whispering and all that sort of stuff,
cool.
and unpack a little bit more of what we started to talk about there. Would be great. So it's ardesignhouse.com. We'll make sure we'll put the links in the description. So if you want to have a discussion with Adrian, you'll be able to find him, go and check out the blogs, all of that sort of stuff, see what other projects you've done on the website, and we'll reach out to you to get another time and another day to talk about this further, because it's fascinating stuff and we need to talk about this more because it's absolutely critical. It is a team event and we've got to work together to give the client a better experience.
100%. And as a footnote to all that, I would say I would rather work with a builder who is coached on their business than a builder who isn't coached in their business. I'm coached in my business, and I'm coached part of a massive group around the world called the Architects Marketing Institute. And there I'm in their mastermind, have been for quite a few years. So it's always about upskilling. I do Archi tours overseas, take builders. We're running one in October this year where we're going to Austin, Texas. We'll be looking at Icon 3D printing in houses. Will be a whole bunch of raft of things, a whole bunch of houses we'll look at. Probably get Matt Reisinger along as well, and from the Build Show, and have a chat with him. just things like this, it's a constant evolution of how we do a better job
Yeah.
and how we upskill everybody so that our customer wins. And the people who are prepared to spend a few bucks on getting coached and are driving for growth in their personal self, not just in dollar value, but in their personal self,
Yeah.
I think are the people to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. So just want to thank you for putting the time aside, for sticking with us in the beginning to get the technical stuff working. You know, we tried lots
The
of
hammers
things.
and nails.
We got it working. We got sound. You were able to hear me. I was able to hear you. It all worked out.
It's
Hopefully
all fine now.
more slippery next time. We'll see how we go.
Yeah.
But thanks very much for being on the show, Adrian. It's been an absolute pleasure
Cool,
to meet
mate.
you. So
Thanks,
that's it,
buddy.
folks, for this episode. I really hope it inspired you. We really need to start to think about looking over the fence about other contributors to the project's businesses, how they operate. How can I be better for them? Because if you take on the commitment to say, how can I improve my business so it gives the client a better experience, so it gives the architect or the designer a better experience, and we all work together as a team, it will profoundly affect everybody's experience. The builder's experience is better, the client's experience is better, the designer, everybody involved in the project will have a better time. We've got to be talking with each other, understanding each other's issues and challenges and seeing what we can do to contribute to the betterment of it, and everyone will benefit. So start to think about that when you're having conversations with your subbies, with your designers, with your prospects and clients as well. It will make a big difference. So I hope this inspired you to think about that. So jump on to ardesignhouse.com if you want to have a chat with Adrian and get into a conversation. That would be a good thing to do. So we'll be back again with another episode of The Tool Shed before you know it. And I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. That is all. I'm out. Bye for now.
You've been listening to The Tool Shed. If this podcast struck a chord with you, make sure you spread the word by sharing it with your mates in the building industry. We love your help to make the building industry better for everyone involved.